What a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy, and this is of particular note if you drive an electric vehicle. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using stock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now we are joined by Arwin, Neil, Sleeping Warrior, 10th Man, Refracted Curvature, Righteous Force, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Yo,
Hello,
yo.
hello. Good afternoon.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Start with a bit of a sciencey question. Is it Ballbusters weekend this weekend? I think it is. So, very appropriate. Subscribe to Quantum Eraser channel and be here or be sphere, 8 PM UK time on Saturday. That'll be the 27th, I believe, for Ballbusters. So, check it out. And on that note, any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
No, none of them can have actual legitimate scientific experiments, as I demonstrated with a brilliant guy. I was host on a channel last night. The channel was called, what was the name of it? Rob Parks. I don't want to glorify him in any way whatsoever, but he claims to be a PhD holding scientist, and turns out he's an astronomer. And I basically spent 5 hours last night telling him what he thinks is science. Astronomy isn't science, and he shouldn't be telling people that it is science because it's not. Pointing out that he's not got any experiment, pointing out that he's not got any controlled variables, manipulated variables. He has got a DV, but he's got no IVs, no controls. He's just got speculative explanations like big black holes causing things and woo-woo science all causing stuff that he can model out. And it was 5 hours that I'll never get back. But I got to tell him for 5 hours that he's not a scientist. It's on the channel Rob Parks. His latest upload. Go and check it out and stick it on double speed. It's definitely interesting to listen to me telling him how much he doesn't have any science to support his delusion that he's a scientist. Very good.
For 5 hours. Oh.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, Anthony gave him therapy for 5 hours. Did you charge him?
No, but if you do it at double speed, it's only 2.5, and it doesn't sound as bad.
Yeah, but obviously he's in pain. You're challenging his worldview at a very fundamental level. You're challenging his credentials as a scientist at a very fundamental level. And obviously he's going to appeal that for as long as he feels this is fit. And did he get anywhere? Did he manage to win the appeals with you, or what? What was the score?
Well, he basically, in the end, he called me delusional, but his sidekick that was with him, a guy called Norman, he was a structural engineer. He got his certificates out for me and flopped them on his table so I could see his certificates, right? And he's a structural engineer, right? But I spent 10 minutes arguing with him whether or not pressure is a force. And I'm like, if I have to argue with structural engineers whether or not pressure is a force, we have a real problem with science, don't we? Because he couldn't accept that because pressure is equal to force over a given area. He couldn't accept that pressure was a force. And we argued so much. And it was like, in the end, I was like, look, if you've got a flat tire and you've got a fully pumped up tire, the fully pumped up tire is keeping the hub off the floor because of what force? And the answer is pressure. Now, I know within our side, we've got this topic about whether or not it's structural support or not. I'm not going to get into that, but I want to contrast it from their side, because within our side, you might argue that there appears to be a structural support, which I don't agree with. But on his side, the answer is clearly pressure. It's pressure that's holding the hub off the floor. And to argue for 10 minutes with somebody that's a structural engineer, whether or not pressure is causing the hub to remain off the floor and sit in the middle of the wheel or not when it's not flat, if that's the standard of science that we've got, we're dealing with morons. And there's no other way to describe it. That is what we're dealing with.
Okay, cool. So like I say, check out Ballbusters. That'll be Saturday the 27th, unless I'm very much mistaken, 8 PM UK, and I believe it's 3 PM Eastern, something like that. But yeah, check it out, Ballbusters, Quantum Eraser channel. We'll all be there and none of us will be square. Moving on to standard flat earth debate, although that is a flat earth debate housekeeping question, right? Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Do you know what he actually said when I asked him to explain any valid scientific experiment in his field that he's ever done? Do you know what he came back with for a valid scientific experiment?
Go on.
He came back with the fluctuations in light between low values and high values of Andromeda galaxy. He said it fluctuates between an X amount of day period cycle. And he says it's low on this day, it's high on that day. And he said, and we've modeled the cycle so we know exactly how bright it'll be on a given day. I said, oh, right, okay. I said, so we've got the flux values or lux values relative to Andromeda. And I said, that's the dependent variable, right? That's the thing that we see, the observed phenomena of twinkling in the sky, right? What's causing that? And he was describing how these movements of celestial bodies that pass in front of it and then away from it over a cyclical period, and how it causes different brightnesses. I was like, lovely. I said, that's brilliant. That. I said, and what did you do to prove that was the cause of the effect? He said, well, we modeled it on a model. I was like, oh my God. So we then spent 25 minutes about whether or not reifying models is science and valid science or not. And obviously he thinks it is. And I was trying to show him how it's not. And he doesn't like it because I'm questioning his authority. And then we talked about whether or not science does have authority. It was a mess. It was a clusterfuck.
So he begged the question of orbits, and then he justified his begging the question of orbits with a model that he made of orbits. Yeah. I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, orbits isn't begging the question fallacy.
Yeah, we got into the argument about the great year, 24,000 years, 25,000 years great year cycle. And I said to him, how can you distinguish that the great year cycle is not an evidence for stellar parallax? And you can't, because we've only been on the planet for around 8, 9, 10,000 years, whatever they say it is. We've not been here for the whole period of 24,000 year great year. Yet you would need to be in that period to be able to have evidence that the great year time period actually exists. Because if you've only been here for half of it, well, that would equally be half of the stellar parallax, because one side it's moving one way and then it moves back the other way with stellar parallax, and we haven't even got halfway through the great year period. Yet he's insistent that it's the great year, and I was like, we have no evidence that the great year even exists. We've only been on the planet, apparently, according to modern science or modern archaeology, for around about 8,000 years, maybe 9, until you discover Göbekli Tepe and then realize it's at least 12,000 years. And they don't like telling them that because they think it's, oh man, it was an absolute mess. The guy didn't understand any. He didn't know what plimsoll lines were and why they were used.
Oh, before you move on.
So much.
So before you move on. So again, where you say we don't even know that the great year exists, what you mean is, again, he assumes this part of the description within orbital mechanics, and then you point out appropriately so that isn't real. You're just assuming that's the case. Now, you might be able to assume it and then describe it quite well with a model, but it doesn't change the fact that he's begging the question of this description within an orbital motion.
Correct.
Any more? Do you want to plug the name of the show?
It was just a guy called Rob Parks. He's got a blue marble, the blue marble logo for his thing. I'm not encouraging anybody to do anything naughty because I know there's YouTube guidelines, but do feel free to wander over and listen to the show on double speed and just tell him how he gets everything wrong, because he got every single thing that he said was all wrong. It's just he doesn't realize it.
Yeah, well, maybe he does. That's why he's there appealing to you to understand his wrong nonsense. That's why they do it. It's becoming more and more clear as time goes by. They're pleading with us to change our minds because we fly in the face of them having a consensus opinion about the sphere Earth they all believe in. Well, we are, what's the word when you're detestable? That's the one. We're detestable to them because we no longer offer them what they want. They want everybody to agree because then they've got consensus. They need to stop us from ruining that. Because they could go about their
Right,
merry
don't
lives if
fall
the
out of
consensus
line.
all agreed. Us pointing out how wrong they are on a daily basis, yeah, they need to appeal to us, not the other way around.
Right.
So, Anthony, did he say science doesn't prove things in
Oh,
the
yeah.
conversation?
Oh man, I went through how how it does prove how it does prove the alternative or the null, and you will establish one of them is true, and he would not accept it because he actually cited somebody called McToon, and I said, why are you citing somebody on the internet for what science does or doesn't, but you dismiss and ignore everything that I've just shown you for what science does establish, and it does establish the cause of an effect. And it's like I was talking French to him. He didn't understand anything I was saying, so he just he dismissed it flippantly because he heard McToon telling him on the internet, and I was like, "Oh,
Well,
this is terrible."
this sounds awfully familiar. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like, you know, your other piled higher and deeper going to Blue Marble Science on the internet to prove gas pressure without a container. That sort of scenario.
Oh man, if you've got a long drive to do, if you're driving between like Toronto and Vancouver or something in the next few days, and you want to stick it on in background, it's brilliant listening. It's funny.
Is that Oh Daddy Boy that you're referencing there?
I don't know what that means. What's that?
Danny
Okay.
Faulkner?
That's what I was referencing. Yes, Ted
Yeah.
man.
That's
At
classic.
least you got his name right. It's Mick Tunes. Nathan
Mick
likes to
Tunes.
call him MC Tunes.
Anyway,
Oh, right.
do you want
He
to
prefers being called MC Tune.
just summarise my comparison there, 10th? Now it's been dragged out a tiny bit. I want it dragged out a bit more. Go ahead, because maybe other people... I thought the reference was obvious, but if you got it and no one else did, then maybe if you can expand on it, what I'm talking about when I say it's comparable.
Was that addressed to me?
Yeah, I just want you to expand on what Danny Boy did.
Danny Faulkner. Yeah, from what I recall, having a sleepless night, my files in my brain are telling me that Danny Faulkner just randomly went on YouTube and got his channel that proved, and he cited it without looking at it. And it was the funniest thing after he was saying that all flat earthers just go to YouTube and grab things. So he did the very thing he was claiming we did, and then he didn't even do it right. Something to that effect.
Presumably, Anthony rejected a few of your citations that make it perfectly clear what science is used for and how you'd have violations of the law of non-contradiction were it not to prove either your null or your alternative, right?
Yeah, he rejected everything I presented to him, right? What he wanted to focus on was, he said, show me one citation anywhere where it specifically says that you must have a manipulated independent variable. So I opened up my folder that I identified as IV, independent variable, and basically I've got 10 in there that say that you've got to manipulate the independent variable, right? And the minute I started going through them, he wanted to change topic straight away, and I was like, no, we're staying on this for a bit because you don't understand this, and I want your audience to see that you don't understand it. So here, on this citation, right, and then get this, right, he basically said, so I brought one up and I said, I think it was North Carolina, and it said that you've got to manipulate the independent variable. And then somebody in chat said, well, North Carolina also say that astronomy is part of science because it's in the science department. And I was like, brilliant. So now what we've got is North Carolina University, right? Thank you to that person who basically shows the contradictions in your science, because on the one hand, you say that astronomy is science. Okay, I accept that they say that. But on the other hand, the same institution say that you've got to manipulate your presumed cause in your science test to be scientific. Yet you've got astronomy that can't manipulate anything other than look at something in a telescope. So now we've got two contradictory things from the same institution, totally invalidating the credibility of your so-called scientific research in the form of undergraduate studies in the context of science. And he absolutely hated that because he thought he had got me there. And I was like, no, it just shows that you're contradictory with your own science. It's contradicting itself. It's beautiful.
Right, but only one is true. And the fact that the same university has said, well, it's science, there's a lot of people in this audience specifically that will say, all right, so there you go. They're saying it's science, therefore the pseudoscience astronomers and their assertions are science because that university said so. Well, no, them saying so in a citation is a baseless assertion at face value unless you can back it up. And backing it up would be to say, with logic, if you have a statement, if A, then B, that's presumed cause of an effect A, and effect you're studying B, then if you cause it by varying it, then it can't, and I repeat, cannot sit in the null formulation. That's if A, presumed cause of effect, then not be. No effect. You can't both cause an effect and not cause an effect at the same time, and that's what the experiment gives you. Therefore, when we describe how science is empirical and how you've got to have a variation of a presumed cause and it's cited, that's got a logical consistency. I forget the advancement of humanity that comes along with it. Yet just saying that astronomy is science doesn't really advance humanity very much. And what have they got to tell you that they're advancing humanity? Well, we've got this model based on a load of assumptions about orbits. Oh yeah, that's really advancing humanity. They are threatened by you, Anthony. That's why they chewed up 5 hours of your time. They can. They're fighting to keep hold of their worldview. There's a Go on.
I realised that, I didn't realise he was new to the topic as what he clearly is, but he had all the cliches that like they used to make in 2016, and it's like he's not even aware that there's counter-arguments to them. It's like he's totally green. And like I was talking to him, I was like, this, it's like going back to 2017 for me, back in the baby days before we were learning how stuff didn't work on their model but couldn't really formulate it. And when I was like, literally, he was in the corner taking blows for the whole show. And he just kind of like very flippantly and blasé just ignored them all. And he was like, I was just like, this guy's an absolute idiot. But it's not bad. It's not good, man.
Well, I mean, ultimately, we've been removed from view for the majority, for the most part, I should say. And that's why I encourage people daily now to share the show. It's like the only reason we've got nearly 100 people watching is because people share the show, not because there's a widespread dissemination of this information. Well, that works as a double-edged sword for the people that are sort of precluding it reaching more eyes, as wasn't the case at 2016, 2015, before all these arguments got developed. What substitutes us, on a side note, is anti-flat Earth. So if you search for us, you'll find anti-flat Earth. Well, that's not very useful. Finding the anti-flat Earth rhetoric first. Yeah? Well, it's also good because the guy who doesn't come across us and doesn't know there's a counter-argument, and here's some nonsense assertion from our opponents only, not only gets confused by them, given a normally globe debunking claim, claiming to be a challenge to a flat earther, when they finally get here, they haven't actually got the nub of the argument. So yeah, the people who are in the know might not want to come here anymore and claim that there's too many tactics used on that show. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, you just don't want to come because you know the outcome. But the people who don't, they'll still come. Like this guy you're describing. I know he hasn't come to us, but in the same regard, he doesn't know of us. So he doesn't know of the arguments that he's having to come up against. He's not well enough armed to deal with someone like you. Now, given that there's several people that have come recently and basically declared how chomping at the bit they are, moaning that we're not in the trenches enough, and that they're out and about and what they're doing when they're out and about absolutely annihilating our opponents. And they're like, I went and saw some people that were dyed-in-the-wood anti-flat earthers and I just absolutely annihilated them. And you're like, yeah. What, because they're not coming here? You just think that the people baying for blood are going to stay within these walls? Nah, they're not. And I don't encourage them to stay or not to stay. Like I keep saying, it makes no difference to us. Come, don't come, whatever. I'll still have a show. We'll still be chatting. The panel will still be here. That might change subtly over time. But the show will still go on. It's not cognitively stressful for us. It is for our anti-flat earth opponents, but back on to the point. Your average normie hasn't got a clue what he's up against when he challenges this argument. And there are people like you, Anthony, and several others that are moaning at us at the moment, like we should be the ones going out when they're baying for blood. Like, my days of, bloodlust for globers isn't just long gone. Really don't care. To the point where, we're all discussing, if they really want me, they'll have to pay me. Because there's really nothing in it for me. It doesn't satisfy my desire to convert these globers to flat. I don't care. Go in peace with our belief. Good for you. Yeah, you can't measure it. Yeah, we debunked it, Black Swan. But beyond that, I've got no desire to be challenging these people and affirming my belief of my own doubt, which is what this really boils down to. Those people who were charged up initially on the flat earth side, I think a lot of it was projecting out their self-doubt. If I can convince you and the world how right I am, then I am right. Because they don't really know that they're right. And in many ways you could say the same was true for us until we got to about 2017, 2018. We started talking about the hijacking of science. That was really the point where we were, me at least, I've got to stop overgeneralizing, started to realise and be self-confident in what I'm actually saying. In other words, I don't doubt any of this anymore. There's no shred of self-doubt in terms of me asserting it. You know, it's like, yeah, it's flat. And am I going to be embarrassed about that? No, that's just how it is. Am I going to be embarrassed for you and you challenge me on it? Yeah, I am. But that doesn't make me feel bad. Not really. But the empathy kicks in to a certain extent when I cringe. But beyond that, that's it. For the people on the opposite side, they're fighting for their world. Like, literally, the stakes are so high for them. And they want to chew up your time doing it, appealing to you, trying to bring you back into the fold, bring you back to the consensus, Anthony.
I don't think, Anthony, you wasted your time. I think we've all gained from the rehashing in the short version of what happened. I think what's happened is if the students go to university and they actually taught the scientific method in all its glory, they would doubt everything the professor says from that point on. So they don't, so they can push their model. So they're purposely not teaching the scientific method properly in order to push the heliocentric model, because if they did, every student would raise their hand and say, well, based on the scientific method, what did we manipulate to get that answer? Then it's not, I mean, it would cause chaos in all the universities. So they just gloss over it and teach it that science doesn't prove things.
True.
Well, they teach you early on in your life that it does absolutely prove things empirically. They teach you so young that you tend to forget. And it works so well that everybody around you wants to hijack the word of science when they talk about their measurements that are really good. So it's not that people don't understand it. It's just it's not reiterated throughout your education. In fact, quite the opposite. You know, things that aren't science are then declared to be science. But you're only having the word of science repeated to affirm that that means proof, when a lot of the things that are being used with that vernacular simply aren't science. But yeah, at a base level, almost everybody in the Western world who's had a Western world education knows that science proves things. It's just very narrow. And often, like I say, what's claimed to be proof and has the word science next to it isn't. Like with this guy. And they're going to defend their honour because they're used to using that magic trick and people going, wow, and swooning because they've said science or scientist. So everything you say is true from now on. That's the respect they demand, and they're not entitled to it. That's the bottom line here.
Right, but isn't the same trick done with gravity? It's a force attracting mass, and then when you get into higher education, no, that's what we said to you then. It's really force space. It's bending of space-time. Isn't that what they're doing there?
But that's just mathematics.
it's different
Reification
because-
of abstract descriptions in maths.
Yes.
Go on, Anthony, sorry.
No, it was me. I was just going to say it's different because where one is an empirical method, and then tacking on things that aren't known empirically, so just hearsay, to what you're saying, which is one hearsay thing, and then being taught that it's not that, it's another thing.
No, I'm talking about they're saying gravity is this, and then if you're so fortunate to go to the higher education, they pretty much admit to you, no, that's not gravity. That got debunked 100 and so many years ago. So it's really this. And okay. So what they're not.
Well, they're not saying science is this and then saying, well, science is not really that, it's this. That's why I don't see the parallel.
No, Nathan just said that when you're younger, they teach you the scientific method. It's empirical, it's there. Okay, then as you get older, they just say the word science, they forget the rest of the stuff, and they add on all their heliocentric crap, and you don't even know what's happening to you. They're hijacking the word.
Yep, that is what they're doing.
I think I might
Right,
start
and then
asking them, well, what do
Then
you
it,
think?
then it breeds these
What do you
anti-flat
think an
earthers.
example of? I'm sorry, just wanted to say that a question I might start asking them is, what do you think? Like, give me an example of pseudoscience.
They'll just go flat Earth.
Nah, you're right. That's so stupid. No, give other before flat Earth was here, pseudoscience was a word. In fact, it's in the Bible, as old as that may be. So that being the case, what is an example of pseudoscience?
Gravity. I just drop this in at this stage, right? Two things. Note to self. when I listen to this back. I'm going to turn off one of my compressors. Note to Anthony, we're not going to get through all of the housekeeping questions. We've done one. So therefore, I'm just going to randomly ask one of those housekeeping questions right now, which is there any scientific evidence on topic, good segue, Nathan, for gravity?
No, but what I can do is I can present some evidence that isn't gravity, but you can and should and will think of it as gravity evidence in future. So if I screen share briefly, I just need about 5 minutes, gents. So if you don't mind me muting up so I can get through it without feeling like I'm rushing. And when we get to the end of it, I'm not going to play it, Nathan. I'm just going to scrub through it. But basically, this is this lady. I've cited her loads of times, but I got this video from Rachel's latest upload, Rachel 50. This is a fantastic demonstration that we all need to understand for why this gravity argument is an issue, right? So what we're looking at is two beakers full of fluids that have got candles as the subject matter. Now the candle's been cut into 3/3. 1/3 is here, 2/3 is there. And you can tell by looking at it that obviously you're gonna think that this one's heavier than that one, but actually they're both the same density, right? Because although there's more mass, there's also more volume. There's less mass, but there's also less volume. Now, for a moment, let's just consider what the flatearth.wgs website says. This so-called debunking website. They use balance scales, and it says an object falls down because of Earth's gravitational attraction, right? Well, we know that's nonsense. But some denominations of flat Earth claim that an object falls down to its density, not to gravity. Well, actually, it's relative density, not density alone. But it uses a balance scale of 2 litres of water relative to 1 litre of water. And they claim that same materials, same atmosphere, same density. It's not, though, is it? Because what they've done there is they've got 2 litres of water in the full pail, but they've got 1 litre of water, but only in half a pail. So they have got the same density, but the balance scales is not considering the volume. So although it's the same density, the balance scales themselves are not considering the volume. If it was the same, so that's the point. So the balance scales takes no account whatsoever of the volume. So let's watch this in real world, right? Because this is brilliant. She's got 2 beakers, right? And what she's basically going to do is she's going to pick the first one up and she's going to drop it in. And it's going to do what you'd expect it to do, right? So she's got the fat one and it sinks. She's got the skinny one and it floats. But is that what you'd expect it to do when the density of them is the same? Ball earthers this lets you think that the mass of this one is bigger, so it sinks. The mass of this one is less, so it floats. But watch what then she does. She takes them both out. She swaps them both around. And now they're both floating in one of the liquids. And then when she puts them into the other liquid, oh, there it is. Now the little one, the big one's still in the right-hand side, but now the little one seems to have become the heavier liquid, the heavier mass, even though it's a smaller mass, now seems to become heavier than what it was at the beginning when she put the long one in. So let's just go back to this. You'd have to watch this video to understand the point that's being made. So she's got the fat one and it sinks, and she's got the little one in and the little one floats. So hopefully, there we go. So fat one sinks, little one floats. Then she swaps them round. So now they're both floating in this one, and then a little bit further on she puts it in, and now the little one sinks, whereas previously the fat one, the big one, sank. So what she's trying to get you to work out here is what's going on here. Why is it that the roles are reversing in the different fluids? And the answer is, of course, it's to do with the medium. One of them is tap water, and the other one is a fluid that's of a different density, but has got the same characteristic that it's see-through, like water has. So it falsely lets you think that they're both water when they're not actually both water. One of them's more dense than the other, and the candle, relative to the density of one, is more dense or less dense. So even though there's more dense and more medium, and more dense and more medium for the two candles, their relative density is the same. They both behave the same in the two set. If they go into the same fluid, they both behave the same. They'll both sink in this one, or they'll both float in this one. The only thing that's changed is the liquid that the medium it's in. So that's like me changing the egg with the salt water, right? So by changing the different fluid medium, you affect the way that it behaves. So basically what she's showing is it is the medium that is causing the acceleration. It is not a gravitational woo-woo force. It is not a buoyant woo-woo force. It is not an electrostatic force. It is the medium that's causing it. So this is a brilliant, brilliant video. I'm going to give massive kudos to this. Came from Rachel's video, but it comes from the channel Flynn Scientific, and the video is many years old, 2012, mass versus density. If you're not sure about relative density, watch this video. It's 5 minutes long, and in the end of it, you will realize that it's all down to the medium. It's got nothing to do with forces. It's got nothing to do with buoyancy. It's all down to the interaction between the two density objects that are identical relative to two separate fluids that are not identical and are of different densities relative to these two. It's absolutely brilliant. So shout out to Rachel for bringing my attention to it.
Click
and
on the
shout
share
out to
button.
this channel for demonstrating it.
Click on the share button for it. There you go. Right below where your mouse is. And then stick it in our live chat. So that's how easy it is to share. See all those Facebook, Twitter, email, see all those things that you can just share with? I'm talking to the audience, Anthony, while you stick it in my live stream chat, if you would. That's how easy it is to share this show. Just click on the share button right below where we're talking right now. Yeah? I know, somewhere down here. Down here-ish. Yeah, click on it and share the show. This one.
Click on that link, guys, and go and watch it. Like, stick it in your list to go and watch after this show, because it's honestly, if you're 50-50 on the density argument, right? Relative density argument, not density alone. Watch that link and you will realize that it's all to do with the medium. Brilliant science.
So, just as it came up in discussion over the last week or so, when flat earthers get the win and then don't realise they've got the win, and it gets distracted away from. So it's a step beyond what you pointed out about 6, maybe 5 years ago, Anthony, when you were like, hang on a second, this point has been subverted to the point where the rebuttal doesn't come, and then when the devastating argument is made with a conclusion, it's so far disjointed from the original point that it doesn't have any weight lent to it. So now we're at the point where, you know, the two have joined. You know, people don't get to subvert away from a point that's being made. But when that point's made and the person's heard it and they haven't got a response to it, and then they try and weasel their way away from the devastating argument that basically means the Earth cannot be a sphere and can only be flat, that's something that I was pointing out, not recognising the win. So yesterday we had a Kumo virus come on, and same old argument we had for, 2021 is the year or the age of the sextant, we're going to say, because of this argument. This isn't new, but I was intending to demonstrate this, and I managed it nicely with about 35 attempts at the point where the sextant, which is measuring two straight lines, cannot achieve a vertices or a vertex with a curved adjacent. Now that was put to him. He was asked was asked where he was going to get this vertices for an angle measurement when he's got a curved adjacent. That would be a sphere Earth beneath his feet. Now he can't, and there was no concession. After 35 attempts, there was lots of claims that I was using tactics and that I wasn't giving him an opportunity to explain his argument, when his argument starts with measuring two straight lines on a flat plane. Yeah? And every time it got to that point where he makes an angle measurement, I'm pointing out to him that, well, that's two straight lines, that's a flat plane measurement that you're making, it's not a curved adjacent like you'd have on a sphere. Yeah, in other words, the argument was concluded at minimum, I'm going to say 45 times, because it went on to another further 10 attempts with him trying to introduce a slightly different argument with the theodolite, but ultimately the same argument that required a flat baseline for his two different measurement points. So, although it could have been introduced, I just didn't want to nick it off QE as he came in with a perfectly legitimate piece of terminology, which is elevation angle. Now, while I didn't want to argue that because I'd clearly just be stealing it from him when he came in and mentioned it where I hadn't, but he's right. That is the argument. You can't have a curved adjacent. So when you're measuring your elevation angle, it's done on a flat plane. You're doing it with a flat line. Now that's the win. That's our win. We win. Flat Earth rules. We are on a flat Earth. There is no two ways about this. Now, further to that, this tool can equally be used as a globe debunking. It cannot work on a sphere. It's a beautiful flat Earth proof, is the sextant. Wonderful. Can only work on a flat plane. Now reaching the point, and this is the case with the virus, where he has to say things like, well, it's easier to just consider it as flat, the sphere I'm standing on, when we take these two straight line measurements that could only be achieved on a flat plane. He's having to disclaim that it's easier when flat. It just overcomplicates things if you don't think of it as flat, was his disclaimer. Now, that is, again, like I say, with 35 renditions of the fact that it can only work on a flat plane and it cannot work on a sphere. There's no way to describe the actual measurement being taken off a curved surface. It doesn't work. So, that being said, I want people to hopefully watch it. I've trimmed it out and cut it right down. It was a solid hour, possibly a bit more, that's been trimmed down to about 15 minutes. Which, as editing goes, that's the biggest ball ache job there is. It took me all morning. But anyway, I've done it, and I want you to have a listen to it. You know, I've got jumps from maybe 5 attempts to maybe 12, 15 attempts, and then up to maybe 28 to 35 attempts. You know, and all the periphery and repeating of the same thing with him chanting and Fundy muting it and then claiming I'm doing that to him has all been removed for the most part. So you could just hear the argument, the rebuttal, the claim that the rebuttal hasn't been given an opportunity to be offered, the rendition of the rebuttal that was refuted, and so on and so forth. That's what we're dealing with. You know, it's a real, if you want, trench level, bayonets pointing right at each other's throats battle in terms of, even when you've won as a flat earther, you're up against people who will simply not concede that they have lost. Because if they do so, they are at that moment relinquishing their entire worldview. Back to what I was saying earlier. The stakes for somebody who wants to tie up someone like Anthony's time for 5 hours, the high stakes for them, for the anti-flat earther / glober. Very high stakes for them. And depending on where you are in your journey in flat earth, not very high stakes for you. Because you might convert one guy to flat earth. You know, think of the last person that told you that they're also a flat earther, other than you going, oh, cool, high five. Did it have a massive impact on your life? Were you suddenly assured that, wow, the world's getting closer? Maybe for some, they think, oh, that much closer to the whole world believing as I believe. It's like, well, don't have it as a belief anymore. Establish in your mind exactly why it is that you know the earth is flat, and then you won't care whether the next man knows or not. Like the anti-flat earthers and globers, respectively, do definitely care. It keeps them up at night. Please share the show, by the way. I know I plugged it earlier, or said the importance of sharing it, but please share the show.
It not only keeps them up at night, Nathan, they have to get away and take a break because the stress is too much.
Also coming out, as we're going to plug things that are coming out over the weekend, I trimmed out that bit about She-Ra. That's coming out on Saturday.
But when is the virus one coming out?
There's 2, so I don't know. I haven't finished either of them, to be honest. When I say there's a lot of editing work involved, there is.
Well, that was very, if we can go back to that, that was very interesting. It took a long time, but this is what we've all been waiting for in the evidence of facts and arguments that have been going around on all the topics that are the housekeeping questions. Now, here comes the sextant. And me, myself, and others just want to see how they're going to respond to it. And we've seen an evolution on their part. Virus is now willing to say it's flat.
It can't not. That's how that tool works. It's brilliant. People wanted a silver bullet. Well, ours is made of brass. It's called the sextant.
Nice one, Nathan.
Wasn't it 10th that said he had a new sextant coming in the next day or two? Was that here yet? 10th?
Yeah,
Sextant.
I got the bubble sextant. It's an A10. It was issued to the U.S. Army, and I have to do a little work on it, make sure the bubble works. But it looks like it's in good shape. But I'll be going on Mitchell from Australia's show. I think next week he wants me to come on, so we're going to talk about it. And there's a lot of talk out there about you don't need a horizon and you don't need to point your sextant at the Earth's horizon when you're at the ocean. And it's funny because it was the Black Swan in January 2020 that gave birth to the sextant idea. And Quantum Eraser and I agreed we should keep it on the quiet until the research is done. So I jumped into the research, and these people don't think that we have talked about the bubble sextant. These people don't think we've ever talked about an artificial horizon. So their response to battle what Nathan just said about the sextant, but you don't need the horizon. You can use a bubble sextant. You can use an artificial horizon. You don't always need the horizon. In fact, you don't need dip correction. Now, what I'm trying to set out for the audience is that was something we saw right away. And they think it's a win when they cite that. Oh, they're going to be so surprised.
Well, hold on. I tried to bring this up once before. Isn't that kind of true? Because the sextant blows past the horizon. Because all you need is a flat plane for the sextant to work.
Precisely.
So the horizon.
That's not the same topic that I'm covering here. What we're talking is if you don't have the natural horizon to shoot with the sextant, what do you do? If you're not in the ocean and you don't have the horizon because you're fogged in so tight you really can't sight the horizon, what do? Well, you just can't do it. Okay, so what's another way of doing it? And that's when the bubble sextant comes in and the artificial horizon comes in. And so I put equal time in researching those things as well. I've been saving those because they frankly wanted them to go down that route, and they have.
Yeah, I mean, it is tied together because what John's saying is when you phrase it, it cuts through the refraction. It's like, well, yeah, because the tool is just applying straight, flat geometry. Now, what 10th's saying is, well, if you can't acquire that straight, flat geometry from a visual horizon because it's completely fogged out and you haven't got anything at all, and you then try and do it with an artificial horizon, well, then it's linked to John's point because what you're then doing with that methodology is still acquiring straight, flat geometry with a slightly different method because you can't just point it at the horizon. So the two are linked. They both come back to having straight, flat geometry to apply to this tool. Regardless of where you acquire your horizon, either with artificial or real, you're still applying geometry, and that is what's the word? I was going to say irrespective. I don't think that's actually a word, though, is it? No, it's irregardless that's not a word. It's irrespective. It is correct.
Regardless.
Irregardless is the one that's not a word.
That's right. No, you're right, and John's right. But, you don't put out all your cards on the table, and they fell for this one, and they're going to be – they're so embarrassed because just the sextant and the way it works embarrassed them. Now they went down this road. Now we're further going to embarrass them some more. So just wait. It's coming. It's
Godzilla super chat that's prompting me that I'm going to start forgetting about them. So first and foremost, shout out to Bex for the 20 Norwegian krona. Thank you very much indeed. It says, we are the elite. Next. Thank you very much indeed, Godzilla37, for $5 Canadian. He says, if Earth is not a globe, how do you have a photo of Superman flying around it, in quotes? Bobby's best proof 2021. Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much, both of you, for the super chat. Really appreciate the support. We might actually get to go to the housekeeping questions, Anthony, as there's prolonged silences after things like super chats.
Go, go, go.
Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as Earth curvature?
That came up in conversation as well. It was literally, they dismissed it with one line saying that's been killed and beaten to death. And I was like, really? You obviously don't understand it then. They can't kill and beat it to death. It's a delusion to think that you can. Oh, man, it's bad.
Wishful thinking. I love those responses. We've responded to all of the housekeeping questions. Oh, really? So you think that I could consistently get up and not have the highest levels of stress by perpetual idiots coming to my chat and telling me on a daily basis how they've been debunked and making it more and more concise by the day? So by the end of it, you could just type in 3 or 4 words or, maybe a couple of sentences that essentially debunk almost everything that we claim in the housekeeping questions. For example, us asking for you to give us an R value, the one that's been debunked because you can't measure the geometric curve. That would be Earth curve, the one we're asking about in this housekeeping question. You haven't got one to measure, we're told it's refracted. Yeah, that annihilates the claim that Al-Biruni climbed up a mountain measured on a flat plane to then derive an R value by measuring the geometric horizon. That's how you got your R value. Now, that's an argument that backs up how, when we say, where's R, Those couple of words annihilate you in any comment. Now, that's not you when you throw out these baseless assertions. We've debunked all of the housekeeping questions. Right, no. Like I say, there'd be concise summaries of how they were debunked in my comments daily, getting ever more concise if that was the case. Just saying it is wishful thinking. Assuming that someone more smart than you, if you're the one saying it, has debunked them. Obviously, someone out there has debunked it. We're on a sphere, so their housekeeping questions can't possibly be right. All right, yeah, well, that assumption is also wishful thinking. Appeal to the authority that is the ethereal debunking of all things that are flat Earth. No, you need to actually assert how it's debunked rather than using your wishful thinking. Shout out to Dank for the super chat. No comment, just gives me money. Thank you very much indeed for the $5.
Shout out retracted for $5.
Nathan, I got a couple of slides in Master B if you want to run a summary on it, just on the previous conversation.
On the sextant, or on the bubble sextant specifically?
Elevation angle.
Oh, great. Yeah, cool. Yeah, let's go and grab that. Actually, while I'm doing this, I'll say the video that does come out on Virus, while it is one of the reasons it took a lot longer to edit, it's also one of the reasons it'll be a really good video. And that's because throughout this process, we've got a 10th man on the panel, and our 10th man happens to have gone and gathered up some of the best pictorial descriptions and indeed literature-based references from globe believers about the subject we're discussing. So it means that when 10th's giving his description on the fly in debate, when I go back and edit it, I've got this great long list of perfect images to slide alongside the discussion. So when Virus says, well, yeah, if you want to say that the LOP's got a radius and that's flat, that's fine by me. I've got it on screen. Because why? Well, not because I've got it. Like this now. Hence me basically giving thanks to 10th man for all his hard work. Because but for the fact that he'd done that, the videos just would not be as good. So when you watch that Virus video and see all of these images popping up, know this. I haven't got a single one of them. They're all 10ths. So thank you very much for making the video that I'm still in the process of getting finished. As good as it is, because that's basically down to 10th. Another shout out to Julio Pabon before we continue. I have got it up on screen, but I'll just shout out Julio. I'm thankful for God for creating a beautiful flat Earth. Me too. The world is beautiful. Absolutely, completely agree with you, Julio. Yeah, and that's something that people are lacking. Shout out to Colin Drescher for the super chat. Let's start putting it up because it's obvious there's a bit of a super chat roll going at the moment. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Julio. Also, shout out to Mike. It said Dank. I don't know why it didn't appear on one of them, but it did on this one, Dank. So there you go. I've read out your super chat. Thank you very much again. And Julio, thank you very much to you. And to Colin Dresser, thank you very much to you as well. But yeah, I want to reiterate, Julio, people don't have enough appreciation. We talk about the stars and stuff all day. Ask yourself this if you're an audience member. When did you last go out on a clear night and spend 10 minutes appreciating them? Like just cricking your neck a little bit and have a look. I bet it was fair old amount of time ago. I might be wrong, but we do live in a very, very beautiful and mysterious world. Now, I say this with the biggest of smiles on my face because that's fantastic. It's one of the best things ever, and I had it before Flat Earth, and I've still got it now. A true wonderment about the world you're living in. So yeah, thank you very much to all of you for smashing the super chat. I'm really poor, so I do appreciate it. Your elevation angle description is on screen, 10th. Take it away.
Yeah, so basically just type in those words, and I just used the first one, but there's plenty more. I'm just reading some of the ones that follow this one. But the angle of elevation is widely used concept related to height and distance, especially in trigonometry. It is defined as an angle between the horizontal plane, an oblique line from the observer's eye to some object above his eye. Eventually, this angle is formed above the surface. There's 3 images there of showing pictorially, but go to the next slide. I went and grabbed one of them, and you'll see how it's shown in celestial navigation terms as you do your. I'm waiting for you to go there, but I should go there.
I'm there. It's just your live stream's not caught up.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So as you can see here, you've got the sun, directly overhead somewhere, there's your horizontal plane in order to get the angle, two straight lines meeting in the corner. That's sea level all the way to the GP of the sun. Now, on the curved Earth, that can't work. So you can't get an angle to work on a curved surface. It's the adjacent. It's got to be flat, like you see here. So the zenith position of the observer is obviously referenced here. The zenith position of the sun is also obviously referenced here. The observer has a GP, a geographical position on the Earth. The sun has a GP where it's directly over the Earth, and that's distance is what you want. So you shoot it with the sextant, you get a right angle triangle, and that's how it works. You get this right angle, and that's why you see the box there. So this is why they don't want us to say 90, because it's a 90 degrees has a adjacent bottom line, and it's flat all the way from the observer to the GP of the sun. So then you minus your reading from the 90. So if in that picture, it's say, for example, 50 degrees angle, well, then you minus that from 90. You're 90, that's fine. What's 50 minus 90? 40. What's 40 times 60 nautical miles? 2,400 miles. So you're 2,400 miles away from the sun's GP. So if you know where the sun is, and you got the nautical almanac or the air almanac, and you've got time set to Greenwich, England, you can figure out where you are based on knowing where it is to you distance-wise. And that's why celestial navigation works, because you need an angle, and to get an angle is two straight lines forming a corner, which we call a vertex, the point that they meet. And the sextant is an angle measuring device, nothing more, nothing less. That's our claim. It cannot work on a curved surface. So it's working, it's been working for centuries, which means what? Earth's not curved.
Means Earth is flat.
I would like to point out in Temp's description of the pure geometry that there's no Earth curve between the position of measurement and the GP of the star.
And by the way, that's not my image. That's their image telling you how it works.
They're all moaning about me e-begging in the chat. So I might have to do a GoFundMe when I get these two bills. So, you know, if I start a GoFundMe, you'll be something to moan about. Chatters moaning about my e-begging. I am poor, what do you want? I had to moan to my wife about how much I'm e-begging at the moment. It's like I'm having to e-beg a lot.
Maybe you should, for shits and giggles, just revamp your whole studio again and just, I don't know, get a couple of grand to blow it all on your studio again that you didn't really need. Just to
say
do
again. I've been buying 1 or 2 panels for the last 2 years to do this studio. So it's not like I've just blown a couple of grand on this stuff. You know, sacrifices, man. I've made sacrifices. Spent the last few pennies that I've got each month to buy a panel or a couple of panels. So last month I bought a couple of panels secondhand on eBay. But that's what I've done for the last 2 years. Because, yeah, I do want to treat the studio, but I haven't got the money to just treat the studio. So it's like, okay, well, I'll buy a panel for 100 quid. Or I'll buy a couple of cheap panels. Anyway, we're in the middle of the live show. This is definitely after show or pre-show territory. I'm just saying, the people in the chat who are moaning about me e-begging, at the moment, I'm waiting on 2 bills for pieces of equipment that I literally need to run the show, and I'm struggling to, because I can't hear my guests clear enough at the moment, because I've only got 1 amp, 1 channel. And that's out for repair, and I don't know how much it's going to cost. I've also got a projector that's fucked, excuse my French, and I'm waiting for the bill. So when those 2 things come, if they're horrendous, which they probably will be, then I'll do a GoFundMe, because I've e-begged solid after 2 crappy months, and all it's done is got me out of my overdraft and kept me, like, flat. So it's not like I've actually raised any money to pay for any of these stupid bills that I'm going to end up getting. So I am, after doing that, not wanting to do a GoFundMe, probably going to have to do one. And I'll be honest, it's humiliating. Nobody wants to e-beg for anything. You just want to be able to sustain yourself with what you do. You know, when you spend all day, every day doing YouTube, you just want to sustain yourself, and you don't want to ever have to mention it, because it's crass. No one wants to hear me talking about money. It's crap. But there we go, that's life. And on the other hand, I've got great people around me who do actually support me when I do these things. And for all the people moaning about it, well, tough luck. You know, I'm not concerned about the subject matter, the technical issues and the aspects of entropy that I have to deal with for having a long-term running show on this subject. You know, those are things that I'll just have to reach out and get help for. But if you're hold on, one more point. If you're a flat earther, I'm not ever reaching out going, I really need help on how they're proving it's a sphere. Just know that much. That's really all that matters. Because for you, the guy who's like, I'm not giving you anything good. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking the people who want to give me help to give me help. But you can have this. Know that we're not asking for help on flat Earth, are we? We're not asking for any awkward questions to be answered that we're finding tricky, or it's not keeping us up awake at night in that regard. So that's where I'll stop my little justification for e-begging constantly at the moment.
Hang on, Nathan. Go to Master B while John asks this question. Last 3 slides before you end the show.
I got something too.
Okay, we're starting with the one with the periscope guy.
Yeah. Do you want me to go, John, or you want to ask your question quickly?
No, go ahead, Tim.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, as you can see here, this is a guy using a periscope bubble sextant. This was invented due to the fact that once the planes went higher, the pressurized cabins, and they can use the plexiglass dome to shoot the handheld bubble sextant. So here's a guy demonstrating how he would use a periscope bubble sextant. Go to the next image, please. So the next image will show a gentleman when the planes were not pressurized, would have to take a handheld bubble sextant and use it through this little dome-shaped acrylic feature on top of the fuselage and sight the luminary with the bubble handheld sextant. Now, it's pretty obvious that the handheld sextant on Earth on top of a boat is done similarly. It's pretty obvious. Let's go to the next picture. Last one to end on. This says it all. And I'm just going to let 5, 7, 8 seconds pass just so the audience could just view the picture, allow the picture to tell you what's happening. All right, so now you've had time to look at this picture. On the left, you see a person holding a handheld sextant, as you would on top of a ship. If you go to the 2 previous images of a person in the plane holding a bubble sextant, whether if it's the periscope or the handheld through the plexiglass dome, see that bubble? That's horizontal. They're saying you need a flat baseline to do it in an airplane because you ain't got the ocean, you're not shooting the horizon, and dip correction is not needed on bubble sextants or artificial horizons. And this picture tells you why dip correction is not needed, because you're already assuming it to be flat, plain baseline. The reason you do dip correction when you're actually using the natural sea horizon is because you're 10 feet above sea level. It's over.
Yeah, it is over. Earth, obviously, observably, measurably, navigatably flat. Shout out to Titan Long for smashing the super chat. Says for technical difficulties, yeah, thank you very much indeed. I really do appreciate it, and yeah, there are plenty of them. And I do appreciate all of you who've smashed the PayPal link, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, all that good stuff. If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!